My name is Natalie Wilson, a 29-year-old former kindergarten teacher from Boston. I never imagined that at 9 months pregnant, swollen ankles and aching back, I would be standing on a crowded bus while my husband Marcus screamed at me. His face contorted with rage as his mother Barbara smirked behind him. 3 years of marriage had slowly transformed my loving husband into someone I no longer recognized. That public humiliation became my breaking point. Before I share my story, I would love to know where you're watching from. Please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment letting me know your city. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. Life before Marcus was simple but fulfilling. I taught kindergarten at a small private school in Boston, nurturing young minds and finding joy in their daily discoveries. My classroom was my happy place, decorated with student artwork and filled with laughter. My parents, Linda and Thomas, lived just 30 minutes away, always available for Sunday dinners and impromptu visits. Dad would bring fresh bagels, while Mom shared stories from her nursing shifts. Their 35-year marriage showed me what partnership should look like. I maintained a comfortable apartment in Cambridge, enjoyed weekend hikes with my golden retriever Scout, and volunteered at a literacy program. Independence was something I valued deeply. My friends often joked that I was too picky with dating, but I preferred being alone to settling for someone who didn't truly respect me. Little did I know how prophetic those concerns would become. Marcus and I met at my college roommate Rachel's wedding. He was the best man, tall with sandy blonde hair and a smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. During the reception, he asked me to dance just as my favorite song began playing. Coincidence, he claimed, though I later learned he had asked Rachel about my music preferences beforehand. "You teach kindergarten? That takes special patience," he said, twirling me gently. "I work in hospital administration, nowhere near as meaningful as shaping young minds." His humility impressed me. Throughout the evening, Marcus remembered small details from our conversations, asked thoughtful questions, and made me feel like the most important person in the room. When other guests interrupted us, he politely acknowledged them but quickly returned his attention to me. Our first date happened the following weekend. Marcus arrived with wildflowers, remembering I had mentioned they were my favorite. He took me to a small Italian restaurant where, surprisingly, the owner greeted him by name. I later discovered he had visited twice that week to ensure everything would be perfect for our date. The next 3 months felt magical. Marcus sent coffee to my classroom on difficult days, remembered my friends' names, and always made time for me despite his demanding job. When I caught a terrible cold, he showed up with soup, tissues, and my favorite movies. His attentiveness made me feel cherished in a way I never had before. Looking back, I can see the warning signs that were present even then. When I mentioned weekend plans with friends, Marcus would look momentarily disappointed before suggesting we do something together instead. If I wore an outfit he considered too revealing, he would compliment me, but then suggest something else might be even more beautiful on you. These comments were always framed as caring rather than controlling. Marcus's relationship with his mother Barbara was unusual from the start. He called her daily, often stepping away for these conversations. When I finally met her 2 months into our relationship, her critical gaze made me uncomfortable. She asked invasive questions about my family's financial situation and my career plans. Marcus laughed it off, saying, "Mom just wants to make sure you're good enough for her little boy." Barbara would call during our dates, and Marcus always answered. When I gently questioned this, he became defensive. "She lives alone since Dad died. I'm all she has." His loyalty seemed admirable then, but I didn't recognize how this dynamic would eventually undermine our relationship. As our relationship progressed, Marcus began subtly criticizing my choices. My teaching career was sweet, but not ambitious enough. My apartment was charming, but in need of a man's touch. My friends were a bit immature. Each comment eroded my confidence while positioning Marcus as the more sensible one in our relationship. After 6 months of dating, Marcus proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. The ring was beautiful but not my style, something Barbara later mentioned she helped select. Still, I was swept away by the romance and said yes without hesitation. My parents expressed happiness, but suggested a longer engagement to ensure we were compatible. I dismissed their caution as overprotectiveness. Our wedding 8 months later was beautiful, with white roses and string lights transforming a historic Boston venue. Barbara insisted on handling many details, often overriding my preferences with comments like, "Marcus would prefer this," or "This is how a proper wedding should be." I compromised to keep peace, believing marriage would establish new boundaries. During our vows, Marcus promised to cherish and respect me forever. Yet at the reception, I overheard him telling Barbara, "Don't worry, Mom. Nothing will change between us." The comment bothered me, but I pushed my concerns aside, attributing them to wedding day nerves. The changes after marriage weren't immediate but gradual. Marcus suggested I stop teaching to focus on creating our home. When I resisted, he emphasized the financial sense of living on his larger salary. Barbara began visiting every weekend, often staying from Friday through Monday. She rearranged our furniture, criticized my cooking, and reminisced about Marcus's ex-girlfriends who were such wonderful cooks. 2 years into our marriage, conversations about starting a family became frequent. I was excited about becoming a mother but wanted to establish healthier boundaries with Barbara first. Marcus dismissed my concerns. "Once we have children, you'll appreciate having Mom around to help," he insisted. After some hesitation, Marcus suddenly became enthusiastic about having a baby. I now suspect Barbara was the catalyst for this change, as she began talking about wanting grandchildren during her visits. When I became pregnant 3 months later, both Marcus and Barbara reacted with overwhelming excitement that quickly turned into constant supervision of my every move. The day I discovered I was pregnant remains one of my most bittersweet memories. After missing my period and feeling unusually tired, I took a test while Marcus was at work. Those 2 pink lines filled me with wonder and nervous excitement. I prepared a special dinner and wrapped the test in a small box with a pair of baby booties I had impulsively purchased. When Marcus opened it, his expression cycled through surprise, uncertainty, and finally, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're going to be parents," he said, hugging me. Within minutes, he was calling Barbara. "Mom, you're going to be a grandmother," he announced, putting her on speakerphone. Her squeal of delight was immediate. "I'll be there tomorrow to help plan everything," Barbara declared. Before I could object, Marcus had agreed, and plans were set in motion without my input. Barbara arrived the next day with stacks of pregnancy books, lists of acceptable foods, and strong opinions about everything from prenatal vitamins to baby names. "Natalie needs to understand that this isn't just about her anymore," she told Marcus while I sat across from them, suddenly feeling like an incubator rather than an expectant mother. My first prenatal appointment should have been an intimate experience for Marcus and me. Instead, Barbara insisted on joining us. In the doctor's office, she answered questions directed at me and presented a list of concerns she had researched. "Natalie has been drinking coffee. Is that going to harm the baby?" she asked Dr. Reynolds, who looked uncomfortably between us. "1 small cup a day is generally considered safe," the doctor explained, addressing me directly. Before I could respond, Marcus interjected, "We'll eliminate all caffeine just to be safe, won't we, honey?" His hand squeezed mine in a way that looked affectionate but felt like a warning. This pattern continued through every appointment. When we learned we were having a girl, Barbara immediately vetoed the names I suggested in favor of family names from her side. Marcus supported her, saying, "Mom has great taste in names." After all, she named me. By my 4th month, Barbara had temporarily moved into our guest room to help with the pregnancy. What was supposed to be a weekend visit extended indefinitely. She took over decorating the nursery, choosing a pink and gray theme I disliked but was too exhausted to fight about. She rearranged our kitchen cabinets to make room for her special pregnancy teas and supplements she insisted I take. "You're doing it wrong," became her constant refrain, whether I was folding baby clothes or preparing a meal. Marcus always sided with her. "Mom raised me successfully, so maybe listen to her advice," he would say, dismissing my feelings as pregnancy hormones. As my belly grew, My world shrank. Marcus began making excuses to cancel my plans with friends. Rachel sounds like she has a cold. You can't risk getting sick, or your parents can visit after the baby comes. They'll just stress you out now. He installed a home security system that notified him whenever doors opened, claiming it was for my safety. He began checking my phone regularly, reading my messages under the guise of sharing everything, as spouses should. Calls with my parents were conducted on speakerphone with Marcus or Barbara always present. My best friend Stephanie tried to visit once, bringing baby gifts. Barbara intercepted her at the door, claiming I was resting and couldn't be disturbed. I only learned about this days later through a text Stephanie sent. Hope you're feeling better. Your mother-in-law seemed very protective of your rest time. Financial control tightened alongside the social isolation. Marcus suggested combining our bank accounts for simplicity, then insisted on approving all purchases. My maternity clothes were deemed too expensive, yet Barbara received a new iPad to help research baby information, without discussion. When I needed new shoes to accommodate my swelling feet, I had to justify the expense repeatedly. Meanwhile, Barbara ordered an elaborate crib bedding set that cost 3 times as much, which Marcus approved immediately. It's not just about money, Marcus explained when I questioned this disparity. It's about priorities. Mom understands what the baby really needs. By my 7th month, I needed permission for basic purchases and had to account for my whereabouts constantly. If I took too long at the grocery store, I would return to multiple missed calls and Marcus waiting in the driveway, claiming concern. The physical and emotional toll of this control became evident at my 30-week checkup. My blood pressure had risen significantly, and Dr. Reynolds noted my weight gain had slowed despite being in the 3rd trimester. Are you experiencing unusual stress at home, Natalie? She asked during a rare moment when Barbara had stepped out to take a call. Before I could answer honestly, Marcus returned and spoke for me. We're just excited about the baby. Everything's fine at home, right, honey? The look in his eyes left no room for contradiction. I nodded silently as Dr. Reynolds prescribed rest and stress reduction, looking unconvinced by my forced agreement. That night, I cried silently in the bathroom, the only place I could find privacy. My daughter kicked inside me, and I promised her things would be different for her. I just didn't know yet how I would make that happen. The morning of the bus incident began like any other day in my 3rd trimester. I woke exhausted after another night of interrupted sleep, my 9-month pregnant body struggling to find comfort. Marcus had scheduled another appointment with Dr. Reynolds to check my blood pressure, which had remained concerningly high. Barbara will meet us at the clinic, Marcus announced over breakfast, scraping the burnt edges off toast he had made. I hadn't asked for toast, but objecting would only trigger an argument about proper nutrition. I thought this was just a quick checkup, I said carefully, measuring my words. Is it necessary for her to come? Marcus's jaw tightened. Mom is concerned about you and the baby. She has every right to be there. The appointment itself was tense. My blood pressure reading was higher than ever, and Dr. Reynolds suggested we discuss a possible early induction. Before I could process this information, Barbara interjected with questions about natural birth versus cesarean section, speaking as if I weren't in the room. Natalie wants a natural birth, Marcus stated confidently, though we had never actually discussed my preferences. After the appointment, Marcus announced we would take the bus home instead of calling a rideshare. The walk to the bus stop will be good for your blood pressure, he insisted, despite Dr. Reynolds' recommendation that I rest. The bus was crowded when it arrived, filled with afternoon commuters. I stood awkwardly at the entrance, one hand supporting my lower back, the other clutching the handrail. An elderly man noticed my condition and immediately stood. Please take my seat, he offered kindly. I thanked him gratefully, lowering my swollen body onto the hard plastic seat. Marcus and Barbara remained standing as the bus lurched forward. Barbara made a show of sighing loudly and shifting her weight. These young people have no respect, she muttered, though loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. No one offers a seat to a woman my age anymore. I noticed a middle-aged woman glance up from her book, then determinedly return to reading. Several other seated passengers suddenly became very interested in their phones or the passing scenery. 10 minutes into the ride, at a particularly crowded stop, more passengers boarded. Barbara was jostled slightly by a teenager with headphones. That's when it happened. Marcus's face flushed deep red. He lunged toward me, grabbing my upper arm with enough force to leave fingerprint bruises. "Why are you sitting?" "My mom's standing," he shouted, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent bus. "Give up your seat. Now." The pain from his grip stunned me, but the public humiliation was worse. Dozens of strangers watched as my husband towered over me, his fingers digging into my flesh, his face contorted with rage. Barbara stood behind him, a small satisfied smile playing at her lips. "I'm 9 months pregnant," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "I don't care," Marcus hissed, pulling at my arm. "Get up. Mom needs to sit down." The bus went completely silent. A woman with a toddler pulled her child closer. The bus driver watched through the rearview mirror, his hand hovering near the radio. Time seemed suspended in that horrible moment. Then, from 3 rows back, an elderly woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes stood up. She was small in stature, but somehow commanded the entire space with her presence. "Take your hands off her right now," she said, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. What kind of man treats his pregnant wife this way? Marcus released my arm as if burned, turning to face this unexpected challenger. "This is between me and my wife," he said, his voice lower but still aggressive. "My mother needs a seat." The woman, who I would later know as Eleanor, moved forward until she stood directly in front of Marcus. Despite being nearly a foot shorter, she showed no fear. "There are 2 people sitting in that seat," Eleanor said, pointing to my pregnant belly. "And neither one should stand for someone perfectly capable of standing themselves." She turned to Barbara. "Shame on you for allowing your son to treat his wife and your grandchild this way." The bus erupted in murmurs of agreement. A man in a business suit stood. "I'm happy to give my seat to the older lady if it's really necessary," he offered, though his tone suggested skepticism about Barbara's need. Marcus's strategy immediately shifted. His public persona, the charming hospital administrator, reasserted itself. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said with a forced laugh. "My wife hasn't been feeling well, and I'm concerned about her and the baby. Mom and I are just trying to take care of her." Barbara quickly adopted a concerned expression. "We've just come from the doctor. Her blood pressure is very high. Sometimes she doesn't make the best decisions in this condition." Their attempt to reframe the situation might have worked had Eleanor not witnessed the entire interaction. "That's not what I saw," she stated firmly. "You grabbed her. You yelled at her. You tried to force a heavily pregnant woman to stand on a moving bus." Other passengers began voicing their agreement. "I saw him grab her arm," said a college student near the front. "He was hurting her," added a woman in scrubs. "I'm a nurse. That's not how you show concern." The bus driver had pulled over and now walked back toward us. "Is there a problem here? Do I need to call someone?" he asked, looking directly at me for the first time. In that moment, with strangers defending me when my own husband wouldn't, something broke and reformed inside me. All the small compromises, the gradual erosion of my independence, the isolation from friends and family, the financial control, the criticism disguised as care, the constant supervision, all crystallized into perfect clarity. This wasn't love. This was abuse. I looked at Marcus and saw him not as the charming man I'd married, but as someone who had systematically dismantled my confidence and autonomy. I looked at Barbara and recognized her not as a concerned mother-in-law, but as an architect of my captivity. "Yes," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "There's a problem. I don't want to go home with them." Marcus's expression darkened. "Don't be ridiculous, Natalie. You're upset and hormonal. We're going home to rest, and everything will be fine." Barbara added, "This is exactly why you need us." "You're not thinking clearly." Eleanor stepped between us. She said she doesn't want to go with you. That's her choice to make. The bus driver nodded. "Ma'am, do you feel safe going home with your husband?" The question hung in the air. For 3 years, I had convinced myself that Marcus's behavior was normal, that his control was protection, that his criticism was guidance. Now, surrounded by strangers who immediately recognized what I had failed to see, I couldn't maintain the illusion any longer. "No," I whispered, then louder. "No, I don't." "This is absurd," Marcus sputtered. "She's my wife. She's carrying my child. She's a person making her own decision," Eleanor countered. "And I'm offering her an alternative place to stay tonight." I looked at this stranger, who was risking herself to help me, and felt more trust than I had in my own home for months. Without another word, I stood, walked past Marcus and Barbara, and followed Eleanor toward the exit. "You'll regret this," Marcus called after me. "You have nowhere to go. You have no money. You need us." I kept walking, one hand protectively over my belly, the other clutching the business card Eleanor had pressed into my palm. Behind us, I heard the bus driver telling Marcus he needed to calm down, or he would call the police. As we stepped off the bus into the afternoon sunlight, I took my first free breath in years. The first few hours after leaving the bus were a blur of adrenaline and fear. Eleanor guided me to a small cafe 2 blocks away, her steady hand on my elbow providing more genuine support than I had felt in months. "You're shaking," she observed quietly, ordering me chamomile tea. "That's normal. Your body is processing a trauma response." Once seated in a corner booth, Eleanor finally introduced herself properly. "I'm Eleanor Griffith. I was a domestic violence counselor for 30 years before retiring. I still volunteer at the women's shelter downtown." Her explanation of how she recognized the signs so quickly made perfect sense. The way he grabbed you, the public humiliation, the immediate attempt to make you seem irrational when challenged, the financial threats as you left, these are textbook abuser tactics, she explained. I sat in stunned silence, the word abuser echoing in my mind. That wasn't a term I had ever associated with Marcus, the respected hospital administrator who charmed everyone he met. Yet Eleanor had identified in minutes what I had failed to see for years. "Where can I take you?" Eleanor asked gently. "Parents? Friends?" I shook my head, tears welling. Marcus isolated me from everyone. "My parents live in New Hampshire now, and we haven't spoken regularly in months. My friends, I don't even know if they'd still consider me friends." Eleanor nodded, understanding. "Then you'll come home with me tonight. Tomorrow we can connect you with resources and make a longer-term plan." My phone had been buzzing constantly since we left the bus. 23 missed calls from Marcus, 11 from Barbara, and dozens of increasingly threatening text messages. "You're being ridiculous. Come home now. Think about the baby, Natalie. You're putting our child at risk. Your parents won't take you in. I already called them. Without me, you have nothing. Remember that." Eleanor suggested turning off my phone, and I did, feeling both terror and relief as the screen went black. Eleanor's apartment was small but immaculately kept, with bookshelves lining every wall and a ginger cat named Rusty who immediately inspected me with cautious curiosity. "The guest room is through there," she said, pointing to a narrow hallway. "It's not much, but it's safe." The room was simple, just a twin bed with a patchwork quilt and a small dresser. But there were no criticisms of my movements, no questioning of my decisions, no Barbara rearranging my belongings. For the first time in months, I could exhale fully. "When was the last time you ate?" Eleanor asked, already heading toward her kitchen. I realized I hadn't eaten since a small breakfast that morning. Eleanor prepared a simple meal of scrambled eggs and toast, watching with grandmotherly satisfaction as I devoured 2 helpings. That night, I slept deeply despite my enormous belly and the unfamiliar surroundings. No one burst into the room to check if I was sleeping correctly for the baby. No one monitored my bathroom trips or water intake. The silence was healing. Morning brought renewed anxiety as Eleanor helped me turn my phone back on. The barrage of messages had continued through the night, evolving from anger to manipulation. "I've been driving all night looking for you. The doctor called. Your condition is dangerous for the baby. If you care about our child, you'll come home now. I've contacted a lawyer. You can't keep my child from me. Most disturbing were the messages Marcus had sent to mutual acquaintances, painting me as mentally unstable due to pregnancy complications. He's trying to control the narrative, Eleanor explained. Abusers often try to isolate their victims by turning others against them. With Eleanor's guidance, I sent a single text to Marcus. I am safe. I need space. Please don't contact me. Then we blocked his number and Barbara's. Eleanor's first call that morning was to Rachel Winters, a domestic violence advocate she had worked with. Rachel arrived within the hour, bringing prenatal vitamins, maternity clothes, and a wealth of information. First priority is your safety and the baby's health, Rachel stated efficiently. Then we'll work on a legal protection order, emergency housing, and reconnecting you with your support system. She explained the resources available through the women's shelter, including legal advocates who understood the complexities of leaving an abusive relationship while pregnant. Massachusetts has strong laws protecting domestic violence survivors, she assured me, including pregnant women. Rachel arranged for me to see Dr. Sarah Chin, an obstetrician affiliated with the shelter, that afternoon. In a small, welcoming office, Dr. Chin conducted a thorough examination. Your blood pressure is still elevated, but better than your records from yesterday indicate, she noted. The baby's heartbeat is strong, and your cervix isn't showing signs of early labor. That's all positive. Unlike my appointments with Marcus and Barbara present, Dr. Chin spoke directly to me, explained every test, and asked for my consent before each procedure. She listened to my birth preferences without judgment and helped me create a flexible birth plan. Stress reduction is my primary prescription for you right now, she said firmly. And that means keeping yourself away from your stressors. That evening, with Eleanor's encouragement, I made the most difficult call of my life. My parents had left 3 voicemails, clearly confused by Marcus's version of events. Mom, I said when she answered, my voice breaking. I need help. The story poured out of me, 3 years of gradual control and manipulation culminating in the bus incident. My mother listened in stunned silence, occasionally asking clarifying questions. We're coming to Boston tomorrow, she said when I finished, her nurse's voice steady despite the emotion I could hear beneath it. Your father is already packing the car. Marcus said he called you. I ventured hesitantly. He did, Mom confirmed. He said you were having pregnancy complications affecting your mental state, that you'd run off with a stranger, and he was worried about your safety. Her voice hardened. I knew something wasn't right. You've never been irrational, pregnant or not. The relief of being believed, of not having to defend my sanity, brought fresh tears. For months, Marcus and Barbara had insisted that my concerns were pregnancy hormones, that my memory was faulty, that my perceptions were distorted. Having someone trust my experience, without question, was profoundly healing. We'll be there by noon tomorrow, Mom promised. And Natalie? I'm so sorry we didn't see what was happening sooner. That night, as Eleanor and I shared tea in her living room, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want to happen now? The future loomed, uncertain and frightening. I placed both hands on my belly, feeling my daughter's reassuring kicks. I want to be safe, I said slowly. I want my daughter to grow up seeing her mother treated with respect. I want to rebuild my life without fear. Eleanor nodded. Then that's where we'll start. The process of obtaining an emergency protective order was both empowering and terrifying. 2 days after leaving Marcus, I sat in a courthouse with Rachel, the domestic violence advocate, and Leslie Taylor, a pro bono attorney from the Women's Legal Aid Society. The restraining order will prohibit Marcus from contacting you directly or through others, Leslie explained. It will also establish temporary custody of the baby once she's born. The paperwork required me to detail the abuse in clinical terms. The bus incident, the financial control, the isolation from friends and family, the monitoring of my movements, the constant criticism disguised as concern. When written down, the pattern was undeniable. Will the judge believe me? I asked. There aren't many bruises. The fingerprints on my arm had faded to yellowing smudges. Abuse isn't just physical, Leslie assured me. Massachusetts courts recognize emotional and financial abuse as domestic violence. The emergency hearing was granted that afternoon. Walking into the courtroom, I froze momentarily seeing Marcus and Barbara already seated with their attorney, a polished woman in an expensive suit. Marcus had shed his aggressive demeanor for a concerned husband facade, complete with dark circles under his eyes, suggesting sleepless worry. Leslie squeezed my hand reassuringly. Remember, the judge sees these tactics every day. When called to testify, I recounted the bus incident in detail, my voice gaining strength as I spoke. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, asked direct questions about the pattern of control preceding that day. Marcus's attorney attempted to paint me as emotionally unstable due to pregnancy, suggesting I had misinterpreted caring actions as controlling. Mrs. Wilson has a history of anxiety, she claimed. Her husband and mother-in-law were simply trying to ensure a healthy pregnancy. Barbara testified next, presenting herself as a concerned grandmother-to-be who had sacrificed everything to help her son and daughter-in-law prepare for the baby. Natalie has been increasingly paranoid, she stated. We've been walking on eggshells around her mood swings. When Marcus took the stand, he portrayed himself as a devoted husband blindsided by my irrational behavior. I've given Natalie everything, he insisted, his voice catching theatrically. I only want her and our baby to come home where they belong. Leslie methodically dismantled this narrative during cross-examination, highlighting the financial control, the isolation, and the surveillance that had characterized our marriage. She presented printouts of the threatening text messages Marcus had sent after I left. Are these the messages of a concerned husband, she asked, or someone angry about losing control? The judge reviewed the evidence silently, her expression unreadable. After what seemed like hours, she granted the emergency protective order. Based on the evidence presented, I find reasonable cause to believe Ms. Wilson is in immediate danger of abuse, she stated. The order will remain in effect until the full hearing next month. Marcus's face darkened momentarily before he reassumed his concerned expression. As we left the courtroom, I heard him telling his attorney, "She'll come back. She has nowhere else to go." He underestimated the support network forming around me. Eleanor continued providing safe housing. My parents arrived from New Hampshire, renting a small apartment nearby so they could stay indefinitely. Former colleagues from my teaching days reached out after hearing rumors, offering everything from maternity clothes to job leads. Most surprisingly, Stephanie, my best friend before Marcus had isolated me, appeared at Eleanor's door with groceries and an apology. "I should have tried harder to stay in touch," she said, hugging me awkwardly around my enormous belly. I knew something wasn't right. Marcus wasn't idle during this time. He initiated a counter-narrative through mutual acquaintances and on social media, portraying himself as a devoted husband whose mentally unstable wife had been manipulated by radical feminists at a women's shelter. Barbara contacted my extended family, telling them I had joined a cult-like group that turned women against their families. Some people believed them. Others recognized the classic tactics of an abuser and reached out to offer support. My former principal called to say, "The Marcus they're describing doesn't match the Natalie I know. How can I help?" 3 weeks after leaving Marcus during a preliminary hearing for the permanent restraining order, I felt the first contraction. I tried to ignore it, focusing on Leslie's questioning of Marcus's financial records, which showed how he had systematically taken control of my earnings and assets. When a second, stronger contraction hit 10 minutes later, I clutched my mother's hand. "I think I'm in labor," I whispered. The judge, noticing my distress, called a brief recess. In the courthouse bathroom, my water broke in a dramatic gush that soaked my maternity dress and the floor beneath me. "Your Honor, my client needs to be transported to the hospital immediately," Leslie announced when we returned to the courtroom. "She's in active labor." Marcus immediately stood. "That's my child. I have a right to be there." The judge held up her hand. "The emergency order remains in effect, Mr. Wilson. You are not to approach Ms. Wilson at the hospital or anywhere else." Leslie had already coordinated with the hospital security team, anticipating this moment. As my parents rushed me to Massachusetts General Hospital, Rachel called ahead to activate the safety protocol for domestic violence survivors. Labor progressed rapidly, my body perhaps eager to release the stress of the previous weeks. The delivery room became my sanctuary, with my mother on one side and Eleanor on the other. Dr. Chen calmly guided me through each contraction, respecting my birth preferences while ensuring medical safety. "You're doing beautifully, Natalie," she encouraged as I entered the transition phase. "Your daughter is almost here." After 4 hours of labor, with one final push, my daughter entered the world with a powerful cry that seemed to announce her presence to the universe. Dr. Chen placed her immediately on my chest, her tiny body warm and wriggling against my skin. "Hello, Lily," I whispered, the name I had chosen independently, without Marcus or Barbara's input. "We're going to be okay." The hospital staff had been briefed about my situation, with security posted discreetly near my room. Their presence proved necessary when, 6 hours after Lily's birth, Marcus attempted to enter the maternity ward. "I'm here to see my daughter," he told the nurse at the station, his voice carrying down the hallway to my room. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's a protective order in place," the charge nurse responded firmly. "You'll need to leave immediately." Marcus's voice rose. "That's my child in there. You can't keep me from seeing my own child." Security arrived quickly, escorting him from the floor as he continued protesting. Barbara made her own attempt an hour later, bringing flowers and claiming to be on the approved visitor list. She was similarly turned away. "You don't understand," I heard her arguing. "I'm the grandmother. I have rights too." The security guard's response was professional but firm. "Ma'am, the only rights that matter right now are the mother's right to safety and the child's right to protection. Please leave before we need to involve the police." In the quiet aftermath, holding Lily as she slept peacefully in my arms, I felt both profound joy and lingering fear. Marcus had made it clear he wouldn't relinquish control easily. The journey ahead would be challenging, but looking at my daughter's perfect face, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right decision. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The first weeks of motherhood were a bittersweet blend of joy and healing. Lily was a surprisingly calm baby with a full head of dark hair and curious blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. My parents and Eleanor created a protective circle around us, allowing me to focus on bonding with Lily and recovering from birth. Every diaper change, every feeding, every tiny milestone belonged to us alone, without Barbara's criticism or Marcus's controlling supervision. When Lily first smiled at 3 weeks old, I wept with the pure joy of experiencing it without someone diminishing the moment. "She's smiling at me, not gas," I told my mother, who understood immediately why this distinction mattered. "Of course she is," Mom affirmed. "She knows exactly who her mother is." These small validations helped rebuild my confidence, which had been systematically dismantled during my marriage. I began to trust my instincts again, both as a mother and as a woman. The legal battles continued in parallel with these peaceful moments. Leslie filed for divorce on grounds of cruel and abusive treatment, along with a petition for primary custody of Lily. Marcus countered aggressively, seeking joint physical custody and challenging the abuse allegations. He's claiming the bus incident was an isolated event caused by concern for his mother, Leslie explained during one of our strategy sessions, and that your subsequent actions demonstrate parental alienation. Marcus hired Preston Jacobs, a high-profile divorce attorney known for representing wealthy clients in contentious custody battles. His legal strategy became clear during depositions, where he attempted to portray me as mentally unstable and financially incapable of providing for Lily. "How do you plan to support your daughter without employment or savings?" Preston questioned, his tone suggesting the answer was obvious. "I'm recertifying my teaching license," I replied steadily. "And I have family support while I establish independence." Barbara's involvement complicated matters further. She filed a separate petition for grandparent visitation rights, claiming a significant pre-existing relationship with Lily, despite never having met her. Massachusetts law doesn't favor grandparent rights over parental objections without exceptional circumstances, Leslie assured me. but we need to address it formally. The courtroom became a battlefield where Marcus and Barbara attempted to rewrite our history. They brought character witnesses who described Marcus as devoted and generous, while suggesting I had been increasingly erratic during pregnancy. Our side countered with testimony from Dr. Chun about the physical impacts of emotional abuse during pregnancy, statements from bus passengers who witnessed the public incident, and documentation of the financial control Marcus had exerted. Eleanor's testimony proved particularly powerful. As a retired domestic violence counselor, she provided expert context for the patterns of isolation and control I had experienced. What I witnessed on that bus wasn't an isolated incident, she stated firmly. It was the public culmination of an established pattern of abuse. While these legal proceedings unfolded, I focused on creating a new home for Lily and myself. With my parents' help, I found a small 2-bedroom apartment in a secure building with 24-hour desk coverage. The property management company worked with domestic violence survivors and understood the importance of confidentiality and security protocols. Moving in with only the few belongings I had taken from Marcus's house was both liberating and daunting. Starting over at 29 with a newborn and no furniture initially overwhelmed me. "We'll build it piece by piece," my father reassured me, arriving with a truck containing a second-hand crib he had carefully refurbished. Friends from my teaching days organized a belated baby shower, bringing essentials and decorations for the apartment. Stephanie helped paint the nursery a soft green, carefully stenciling woodland animals along one wall. "This is so much better than that pink monstrosity Barbara was creating," she commented, referring to the nursery I had described from my old home. Security remained a constant concern. Marcus had been caught driving by Eleanor's apartment several times, and once attempted to follow my mother when she was out with Lily. The building's security features, including limited access entry and cameras, provided some peace of mind, but I still checked the peephole twice before opening my door. Financial independence became my next priority. With Lily napping peacefully in a bassinet beside my desk, I completed the online courses needed to renew my teaching certification. The process rekindled my passion for education, which Marcus had subtly devalued throughout our marriage. Rather than returning to classroom teaching immediately, I accepted a position developing online curriculum for a virtual education company. The role allowed me to work from home while caring for Lily, building my resume and financial stability simultaneously. My first independent paycheck brought tears of pride. The amount was modest compared to our household income with Marcus, but every dollar represented freedom rather than dependence. Therapy became an essential part of my recovery. Through weekly sessions with Dr. Rivera, a therapist specializing in domestic abuse recovery, I began to recognize how gradually Marcus had normalized controlling behavior. Abuse often escalates so incrementally that each new boundary crossed doesn't seem significantly worse than the last, Dr. Rivera explained. "It's like the frog in slowly heating water, unaware of the danger until it's too late to jump out." We worked through the guilt I felt for not leaving sooner, the shame of having missed the warning signs, and the fear that continued to surface in unexpected moments. Through group therapy with other survivors, I found validation and strength in shared experiences. I used to believe I was alone in not recognizing abuse disguised as care, I told the group during one session. Now I understand how common these patterns are. 6 months after leaving Marcus, we received the court's decision regarding custody and the divorce proceedings. The judge granted me primary physical custody, with Marcus receiving limited supervised visitation once Lily turned 1 year old. Barbara's petition for grandparent rights was denied based on her enabling role in the abusive relationship. The financial settlement included child support and a portion of marital assets, though Marcus had managed to conceal some funds. The divorce was granted on grounds of cruel and abusive treatment, validating my experience in official court records. When Leslie called with the news, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset, Lily sleeping peacefully indoors. The relief wasn't immediate euphoria, but a quiet unfolding of tension I had carried for months. "It's official," I told my sleeping daughter later that night. "We're free to build our own story now." Marcus's final attempt to exert control came through a carefully worded email sent after the court decision. "This isn't over," he wrote. "A piece of paper doesn't change that she's my daughter, too." Instead of responding, I forwarded the message to Leslie and blocked his email address. His threats no longer held power over me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I had proven to myself and to Lily that we could face them with dignity and strength. 3 years have passed since that fateful day on the bus. Lily recently celebrated her 3rd birthday with a small party in our garden apartment, surrounded by friends who have become family. Watching her blow out candles, her dark curls bouncing with excitement, I barely recognized the fearful woman I once was. Lily has grown into a confident, curious little girl who loves dinosaurs and ballet with equal passion. Her bedroom walls feature both tutus and Tyrannosaurus Rex posters, her choices unhindered by gender expectations or controlling influences. She speaks in full sentences now, often surprising me with observations that reveal her understanding of the world. "Mommy's strong," she declared recently, watching me assemble a bookshelf without assistance. The simple phrase held more validation than any compliment I received during my marriage to Marcus. Our new life bears little resemblance to the controlled environment Marcus and Barbara created. Our modest 3-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood offers Lily a backyard for exploration and me a home office for my expanding educational consulting business. I've rebuilt my credit, established savings, and recently qualified for a mortgage independently, a financial achievement that once seemed impossible. Eleanor has become family in every meaningful way. After that first night of sanctuary in her apartment, our connection deepened into a relationship that defies simple categorization. She visits weekly for Sunday dinners, reading stories to Lily and sharing wisdom from her decades of helping women rebuild their lives. "You know, I've worked with hundreds of survivors," Eleanor told me on Lily's 2nd birthday. "But watching you and Lily thrive has been one of the greatest privileges of my life." At 81, Eleanor remains remarkably active, though she now walks with a cane adorned with colorful ribbons Lily selected. She has become the grandmother figure Lily deserves, offering unconditional love without criticism or control. "Granny Elle knows everything," Lily often announces, presenting Eleanor with treasures found in the garden or questions about the universe. My work helping other women emerged organically from my own healing journey. 2 years ago, I began volunteering at the same shelter that assisted me during those early days after leaving Marcus. Initially, I simply shared my story with women facing similar circumstances, offering living proof that independence was possible. This evolved into facilitating a support group specifically for mothers leaving abusive relationships. Mothering After Manipulation meets weekly in a bright room with toys for children and resources for women rebuilding their lives. When I left, I didn't know anyone who had successfully started over with a baby. I explained to the shelter director when proposing the group. I want to be that example for others. The transformation from survivor to advocate has been healing in unexpected ways. Each woman who finds her strength reminds me of my own journey. Each child who begins to laugh more freely echoes Lily's development away from the tension of an abusive home. Last month, I expanded this work by launching an online resource connecting mothers with legal advocates, housing assistance, and employment opportunities. The website includes success stories and practical guides for navigating the challenging first year of independence. My relationship with myself has perhaps seen the most profound healing. The voice in my head that once echoed Marcus's criticisms has gradually been replaced with compassion and confidence. I no longer second-guess basic decisions or apologize for taking up space. Simple pleasures Marcus once criticized as frivolous have returned to my life. I sing loudly while cooking. I wear clothing chosen for comfort rather than approval. I make decisions based on my values rather than fear of criticism. My body, which carried both Lily and the physical manifestations of chronic stress, has slowly recovered its strength. Yoga and hiking have replaced the restrictive exercise regimen Marcus insisted upon. The woman in the mirror now meets my gaze with steady confidence rather than searching for flaws Barbara would inevitably point out. Trust remains a work in progress. Dating has not been a priority, though friends occasionally suggest introductions. My therapist assures me this caution is healthy, not harmful. You're re-establishing your relationship with yourself first, she observed. That's the foundation for any healthy future relationship. Marcus himself has faded to the periphery of our lives, though not without resistance. After losing the custody battle, he maintained supervised visitation for 6 months before gradually canceling sessions. His child support payments arrive irregularly, despite court orders. Last year, during a rare conversation regarding Lily's preschool enrollment, Marcus offered what might be considered an acknowledgement of harm. "I didn't understand what I was doing," he said quietly. "I thought I was protecting my family." This statement fell short of a genuine apology, but revealed a limited recognition of his behavior. According to mutual acquaintances, Marcus remains closely tied to Barbara, who continues to control his personal life. They present themselves as victims of an unfair legal system that separated them from their child. While I once craved validation from Marcus, his acknowledgement no longer defines my reality. The truth of our experience is documented in court records, witnessed by strangers on a bus, and evident in the emotional freedom Lily displays compared to children raised in controlling environments. Barbara occasionally attempts contact through third parties, sending gifts that are returned unopened or making claims about family medical history that might impact Lily. These efforts at re-establishing connection are addressed through legal channels rather than direct engagement. Lily herself has flourished beyond my most hopeful expectations. At 3, she demonstrates emotional intelligence and healthy boundary setting that many adults struggle to achieve. When overwhelmed, she communicates her feelings clearly. When happy, her entire being radiates joy. "No thank you," she stated firmly to a persistent playmate recently, establishing her boundaries with remarkable clarity for a toddler. Watching her advocate for herself in this small moment filled me with pride and reassurance that the cycle of control would end with our generation. The legacy of our experience manifests not in lingering trauma, but in conscious parenting choices. I encourage Lily's independence within safe boundaries. I validate her emotions without judgment. I model healthy relationships and self-respect daily. My journey from that crowded bus to today has taught me lessons I hope to share with others facing similar crossroads. I learned that love never requires diminishment of self. Control is not protection. Isolation is not intimacy. Criticism is not guidance. Most importantly, I discovered that breaking free requires both courage and community. One stranger's intervention created the opening, but sustained support made recovery possible. Every woman deserves both the opportunity to leave and the resources to rebuild. If you're watching this and recognize your own relationship in my story, please know you're not alone. The first step toward freedom is often the hardest, but a different life is possible. Trust that small voice inside that says you deserve better. It's telling you the truth. For those who have never experienced such relationships, your awareness matters. Had the bus passengers looked away that day, had Eleanor remained silent, my story might have ended very differently. Sometimes safety is just one intervention away. Have you ever witnessed a situation where something felt wrong but you weren't sure whether to speak up? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize when to act. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience, and share it with someone who might need this message today. Thank you for witnessing my journey from fear to freedom. Remember, the life you save might someday be your own.